Hi, it's Dr. Jenn Kennedy. I'm a sexologist and couples therapist. The Pleasure Project podcast is about sex and relationships. So this includes discussions on desire, dysfunction, dissatisfaction, exploration of all things sex related. So sometimes I'll do toy reviews and we'll look at trends, and sometimes I'll also enlist other experts. We'll increase your insight and enhance your pleasure. So tune in.
Have you had sober sex? Well, imagine if that is your only option going forward, because plenty of people in recovery are in that boat. And that is the topic today, is sex and intimacy in recovery. So in this episode, I sit down with Kim Litton. She's an LCSW, and we talk about that because plenty of people are in recovery and attempting to have relationships. So dating as well as long-term relationships that they're already in, but trying to reapproach sex and intimacy is a whole different ballgame, right? Is looking at what does that involve, what gets tripped up, the trickiness of expressing your needs and negotiating with another person and understanding how hard it is to be in that space. So we're going to unpack it all and look at that with a clinical eye. So tune in. Welcome back. My guest today is Kimberly Litton. She is a licensed clinical social worker and certified sex addiction therapist. She has an extensive history of treating women with alcoholism, addiction, eating disorders, and sex addiction. She developed and led an intensive outpatient program for women with substance use disorder. She then went on to be clinical director treatment programs that specialize in substance use disorder and eating disorders. She is the author of I Do It For Her, a memoir of discovery and redemption from sex, love, and substances. Kim has a private practice in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Kim and I recently met at a conference and I attended her presentation and I just loved her. And I just said, you have to be on my podcast. I think this is such an interesting cross-section, I guess, of the work that we do and looking at intimacy in recovery. And I thought that's a topic that a lot of people need to hear about because they struggle with it. And it's important. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I know, and I just adore you too. I remember us meeting in the coffee shop and us having the same shoes, and so we're forever friends now.
I know. It's like, I like her outfit. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's just start with, kind of how do you come into this work? I mean, I know you wrote this book, which is so brave, of your own story of recovery. So if you want to briefly kind of talk about that.
Sure. In 2004, I came to Florida on an airplane to treatment. My parents put me on an airplane and sent me off to treatment and for drugs and alcohol. I was addicted to Oxycontin and cocaine at the time. And I was an addict. I was a junkie, basically, for lack of a better term. And what I noticed when I came out of and got into recovery is so many other women are like me, and I felt so seen. And I felt so when I went to meetings, 12-step meetings and things. And I felt like I came out of a lot of shame from doing that, because in addiction, I think women are just more shameful to have an addiction, first of all. And then for, to get clean and sober, it's almost, I don't know, like, I guess my family had a hard time understanding it and everything. So, and then what I noticed as well is I just started, immediately dating and wanting that excitement again. But I had no idea how to do it because I was sober, and like, I'd always just done this high and just navigated my dating world in a stupor, basically, or, in an altered state. So that became an issue then. I didn't know it at the time, of course, but that became an issue. I met my husband, and then we had terrible time like communicating and stuff because we were both clean.
Well, and I think also if you've got a history of using substance, then you've probably got some arrested development in the social emotional department.
Yes.
You typically aren't going to have a lot of built and established in terms of.
I remember they told us in treatment, in rehab, they told us that the age that we started using substances regularly is the age we were that was the age that we were starting from, basically, emotionally. That's the development we had gotten to was, so it was 14 for me, right? And so I'm 14 years old as a 26-year-old in recovery. And yes, like so many emotions were arrested.
Yeah. So it's like you're trying to have a grown-up life with all the responsibilities of an adult and a married person functioning as a 14-year-old. Yeah.
100%. Yes.
Well, and let's talk about in general too, just the intimacy difficulties that most people have in that are deep in substance use. Because I mean, you've been a clinical director, right? You've seen people come through treatment centers as well as your own experience and the challenges with close relationships, not just in partnership, but even in friendships, right? It's pretty common.
Yeah, totally. Intimacy is so hard in addiction. Usually it depends on the level of your addiction. Addiction is progressive. So, if you're in the beginning stages of addiction, you may still be functioning somewhat, but in the later stages of addiction is where it takes a toll on intimacy. So, let's talk about sexual intimacy first. An opioid addict, all of the pleasure in the brain is towards the substance. So there's no more sexual pleasure. It's very hard for an opioid addict to get aroused sexually. Very hard, especially for a woman. It's very hard for sedatives as well. I'm losing my words here. Like Xanax, benzos, I'm sorry, for benzos as well. In the later stages of addiction, it's very hard for them to be sexually aroused as well. So it very much affects marriages. And then let's go back a little bit, even before the sex, is the intimacy, the emotional intimacy. They are just not present for their relationships. They are focused on, and I should put it on we, because we are more focused on the most important thing to us is the drug or the substance.
Right. There's
It truly
level of
is.
distraction, a level of seeking that makes it so there's a third entity in the relationship.
Yes, it's literally like I've heard spouses say, it's literally like they're having an affair on me because of the substance is the other person in the marriage, or the other person in the relationship, right? So it is like you are fighting a substance, though, that's hijacked the brain so much. So the attention, the focus, the everything is on the getting the drugs, the seeking the drugs, the paying for the drug, and so it kills intimacy completely.
Yeah. And typically anyone entering like a 12-step program, for example, is going to have the suggestion to not date for a year, which
Yes.
freaks a lot of people out. They're like, why not? Why, that's not my problem. Like, why can't I date? Why is that a suggestion?
So I love that you asked that. The suggestion is because when we are on substances, so dopamine is a pleasure receptor, right, in our brain. When we're on substances for a long period of time, our dopamine kind of stops working, right? Our natural dopamine, because the substances are creating it, like are doing that job for the brain. So when we get off of drugs, the dopamine levels are very low in their brain. So recovering addicts may not want to use drugs or substances, but they definitely want to feel something again. They want to feel a high or pleasure, and that's just a human being. So our next thing available to us, especially in treatment, if you're in a treatment environment where you're close to people and you're hearing their intimate stories, it's like that little dopamine hit of getting attention or getting validation from someone else is a
So
really
it's really
wonderful.
easy to attach to someone and then just kind of switch and also
Right.
then abandon your recovery process to just be in like lust, right? With
It
somebody.
completely abandons your recovery process. And that's for all process addictions too, is we can kind of fall into that. But like a love or relationship type of issue, I think it's it's more prominent in recovery, because that's the closest thing, is the companionship from other people. And so we'll typically fall into love or and get hurt very easily, or
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth, if we do date before that year. So it takes our brain, to get back to the brain chemistry, it takes our brain a long time to naturally produce the dopamine again, you know, to have our brain whole. It takes our brain several months to heal. And then, so that's basically why they say wait a year. Plus, we're going to be getting our self esteem back. We're going to be
Right.
building self love and self worth. I mean, we're going from a shame hole, to, building self worth and self value.
Right. Because typically we're also seeing those folks in early recovery not having good boundaries, not being able to
Exactly.
set limits, not knowing what's mine and what's yours. And the shame is just so close because they're cleaning up all the chaos of the recent addictive mess.
Exactly. They're cleaning
Yeah.
up all the chaos. Yes.
Yeah. So how has your journey shaped the way you approach this work as a therapist? Because I know that like so much of our work is kind of informing, and also sitting with clients, it gives us new information all the time, right? We're learning constantly, but like how has that informed what you do?
I know. I love this. I love this work. I have a passion for this work, as you do as well, Jen. I know. But how does it help me, and how does it affect the work that I do? I think I do have a little bit of a unique experience, because I have been through the pits of addiction, come out of the pits of addiction, gone to a lot of love and sex to kind of get that excitement and understand. So I understand, I feel like, a lot of what women are going through, but most of all, I think I understand the shame of being, just not having morals a certain time in my life, and not having strong values or morals, and really going against all of my values and morals for a substance, and then kind of coming out of that and helping other women or other people come out of that to find their self-worth. I feel like when you've had the experience of doing so yourself, it's easier and more personable to
Mm-hmm.
do that with a client.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like almost like you're coming from, I mean, I think there's something so valuable about having walked in those shoes and saying, like, I'm with you in that way, right? I'm with you because I've literally been there and I can drop into the space that you're holding right now. And I know how that feels, right? That's true empathy. And I can't tell you exactly how you're going to get out of it, but like, I've got some ideas, right? And the client feels that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, whether you say it or not, too, right? I mean, sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
don't even tell people that I'm in recovery from anything, but just hearing the, like, specific lingo, or hearing you say certain things, clicks in an addict's brain, like, she gets me.
Yes.
She like understands this, and so I don't have
Yeah.
to necessarily make it about me sometimes, or anything
Yeah.
about me. It's more like it feels more refreshing to them to just hear certain words or certain phrases that help them to get it.
Yeah. So let's shift a little bit. Like, what role do substances play in sexual scripts? Like, when it comes to, let's think about like confidence or maybe
Mm,
being, inhibited, for
mhm,
example.
mhm. Oh yeah. Oh yes, girl. I mean, to be honest, that was one of the reasons that I started using drugs in the first place, was to feel more comfortable in the bedroom. I, from a very early age, was sexually active and absolutely adored my boyfriend, would have done anything for him, but I was very shy, and I was very modest and shy in the bedroom. And so to lower my inhibitions was,
Hmm.
everything for me. And to be drunk or to be high helped me
Yeah.
so much to just
And I don't think
not.
this is just addicts, this is anybody, right? It's like it
Oh,
takes the edge off. I mean, lots of people, I think, are in this camp of like, I feel nervous going into this experience. I'm going to use substance,
so
to numb
absolutely.
myself a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be addictive, but since we are speaking of addiction, that is one of the main reasons that I did start using was with the romantic partner. And also it helped keep us together because he did it so often. I just wanted to be with
Mhm.
him. So I was clinging to him. But I do believe, obviously, alcohol even, is legal and it's I mean, it inhibits us from caring, and
Yeah.
from being so it's a social lubricant, right? And so it's also a
Yep.
sexual lubricant. And so therefore, of course, the substance is going to lower the inhibitions, but also in addiction, it completely lowers it to where then I started going against my own morals and values and
Well, there's
where
almost a cycle because you do it in that moment, but then when you're coming out of it, there's also, it deepens the shame, right? Because you're sort of in a later place thinking, what did I do? Ugh. And then it's,
uh,
right. There's some
absolutely.
regret
Oh,
and some self loathing or self disgust or, deeper shame. Yeah.
yeah, so it like goes hand in hand with that shame cycle of
Hmm.
addiction as well, of like, yeah, waking up to somebody you have no idea who they are, or, talk all day about things that you when you do come down off of the drug, you're just like mortified at the things you've done.
Yeah. It's like the outcome isn't something that you would have chosen, if you hadn't been using the substance. And so there's this like, ugh, yeah, self abandonment.
Exactly. Yes. I think I say it in my book too. I say a lot. I did things I promised myself I would never do. And I said things I promised myself I would never say. And I was just going
Mhm.
against all of my
Yeah.
core beliefs.
Yeah. And then give me some examples of what kinds of intimacy challenges show up in early recovery. Like I'm
hmm
thinking specifically of anorexia as one of the terms we use in, sort of in the CSAT world, but like what is that? And then what else do you?
100%. I think the fear of being overly sexual again
Mhm.
or losing yourself sexually can play a role in that anorexia part of like just so you're protecting yourself from any kind of sexual interaction, any
Mhm.
kind of intimacy, meaning like even just going on one date, you're protecting yourself, out of
And just so
fear of
listeners who don't know the term anorexia used in this context, meaning like basically just avoiding sexual contact, right? Like in the food
avoiding.
context, it means avoiding food, but in this means, sometimes people will just, once they get sober, they don't want to have any kind of sex or they just sort of shut down. They're closed for business and kind of avoid dating or avoid sex.
Right. And that's much more prominent in the sex addiction world than in the substance use addiction world. I think we see the opposite in substance use is like the
Right.
opposite. Then they go into like the sex and love stuff or just the love, they're wanting that dopamine hit. Excuse me. They're wanting that dopamine hit again that
Hmm.
they're so craving and love and talking to somebody and getting attention from somebody. That's all kind of part of it. So it can literally, if we're looking at this as a spectrum and anorexia being on one end and then addiction, or we don't even have to call it addiction, overly acting out is on the other
Hmm.
end. I feel like recovering addicts can tend to go in this level, but sex addicts can tend to go into the anorexia because they're so fearful of going back into the addiction piece.
So it's almost like, okay, I can't do this thing anymore, but I'm going to do this other thing to kind of substitute. It's like I need
Yes,
my fix or I need something to make me feel better. And so this thing's
exactly.
still allowed. I've heard actually that sometimes 12-step meetings can be pickup zones.
I know. It's true. It is true. So, but I did want to say though, I have seen spouses who get sober from alcohol or get clean, and they are more because it's with the one spouse, and they are definitely more fearful about, even getting naked in front of their partner without being drunk or high,
Hmm.
even getting just more touchy with their partner and things because they've never experienced that, so that is definitely a problem and an issue that I've had to work through with and it's more clients who are in a committed relationship than my clients who are single, because my single clients tend to veer the other way of like wanting to
Mm-hmm.
date.
Yeah, but those that have entered recovery, right, and they're already in a committed long-term relationship, that's a
Mhm.
different negotiation because whereas you'd think sobriety would be a great thing, but their partnership has also been sort of this negotiation where both have contributed in some way to the system has been oriented around their
Yes.
use. And so
Yes.
when they get sober, sometimes the other partner is still using or doesn't
Yeah,
completely know what they're in for when
exactly.
the partner gets sober, how that's going to change the system.
Absolutely, and it really does change the system and causes a lot of turmoil for some people. Before it gets better, it gets worse sometimes, because you're right, the other partner may be drinking casually or non-addictively, but
Mm-hmm.
the alcoholic or the addict client needs their partner to support them and to not drink around them at first. So it's very hard for the coupleship to learn something different because absolutely they've been in this pattern as a long-term relationship. So it worked to some
Yep.
degree until it stopped working.
Well, and let's take a quick break. We're going to learn a little bit about the pleasure circle and we'll be right back. A quick pause here to share something that I've been working on that I think you will really appreciate, especially if you've ever felt confused or disconnected from your sexual desire. It's a self-paced course that I created for women who want a better understanding of their sexual desire, especially if it's felt confusing, inconsistent, or hard to access. A lot of us are taught that desire should just be there, effortless, spontaneous, always on, but that is not the reality for most people. And when it's not, it can leave you feeling frustrated or like something is wrong with you. If you've ever felt turned on one day and completely disconnected the next, or if you've struggled to say what you really want sexually, if you're both excited by the idea of vibrant sex and hesitant about what that even looks like, this course is for you. Desire is complex. It lives in your brain just as much as your body. And in this course, I guide you through the understanding of your unique relationship to it without pressure, shame, or performance. You'll get short videos and guided worksheets to help you map out your personal erotic template, identify what turns you on and off and what shuts you down, understand the blocks might be getting in your way, reconnect with your body, and you'll explore your sexual self with more confidence and curiosity. You can go at your own pace. You don't need to want more sex. You just need to want to know yourself better. So if this resonates, then head on over to pleasureproject.us and learn more and enroll in the course. Now back to the episode. Let's talk about how sobriety in a partnership can change sort of the relationship to pleasure. Because when we were just sort of touching on that, but when a partner is sober and re-entering a relationship and wanting to experience pleasure and how that showing up with new vulnerability, right? They're stripping away all their coping that they may have used for drugs and
Exactly.
alcohol. And so they're feeling pretty vulnerable, pretty raw, and they have a lot of new self-awareness, hopefully, through some recovery work, but they're showing up with a partner that might be in a different space that maybe hasn't done that work. And how does that new communication skills and all that, like, how does that look?
It's a lot of unlearning and then relearning. And you're exactly right. We're thinking about, an addict in early recovery or an alcoholic who's in early recovery. They probably have a therapist they're working with to work on the communication skills, to work on the new coping skills for any kind of stress or anxiety or feeling shy in the bedroom and things, or a sponsor too, to help with that, to help with learning how to speak up for themselves or create any kind of boundaries. 100%. Then you have a partner that may not have any of that kind of
Yeah.
support, right?
Yeah.
And the partner's like, well, why can't we just do it like this and you just not drink? And it's so not like that. We can't have it like that because there's so many reasons why the drink was there in the first place or the drugs were there in the
Yeah.
first place. It was a coping skill, right? So it started as a coping skill in the beginning and then it morphed into addiction. And now the partner wants, well, why can't we just be like we used to be, but no no alcohol or no drugs. And it's just like, it's not that easy. It's just not that easy. It takes a lot of therapy and a lot of unlearning old and really sick messages that they've created in their relationship, unhealthy dynamics.
Right. And back to that idea of I'm with you sometimes looks like I'm going to be sober with you, and certainly sober sex with you, because, this being in this intimate space, I would imagine probably feels best when both parties are really present, and the
Yeah.
presence comes through, through clear mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where you're
Right.
asking and you're communicating and you're sort of, in the moment and really able to be there both, and not just one of you, because if the other person isn't, that's so obvious.
It's so obvious. 100%. That's what healthy sex is for both partners to be present with the sex and to be present with each other in the moment. And absolutely it can cause a huge wrinkle in the dynamics of the sexual intimacy when one gets sober and one isn't quite on board. But also, how helpful is that for the other partner to be like, I fully support you and I'm going to do this with you too.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means not using or drinking around you, then that's what it means. And I'm going to come into this relationship as well, learning these new habits with you.
Yeah. And I would say too that sober sex is probably intimidating for both people.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's an
Yeah.
attachment for the other partner, the non-addictive partner, to substance too. Otherwise, it would be a non-issue. There's a little bit of a leaning on it. And so giving that up and approaching it, without it feels probably a little bit intimidating,
100%. I
a
mean,
little
just
bit
like we
anxiety
talked about,
producing.
yes, just like we talked about a few minutes ago of like it being the social or sexual lubricant, that's for a non-addict as well. It's just naturally lubricant. So for that person to also give up the alcohol, of course, it's intimidating. It can be scary. It can be very vulnerable. And again, that's the goal, though, is for each partner to be vulnerable and safe in the intimacy connection.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, for I work with a lot of couples and couples that have had sex kind of off the table for a while, and substance sometimes isn't even part of the picture, but just trying to re-enter this erotic space when things have been challenging and offline for a long time is really tricky, and it's intimidating. And so once you've taken out a problematic piece like substance, and typically with that, you're going to get support and look at some self reflection and that
Right.
type of thing, right? You're re-entering in a different headspace than what's happening, right? So then you're coming back together with hopefully more confidence, more grounding, more centering, more intentionality, more vulnerability.
But it takes work. It takes so much work on both partners' part
Mm-hmm.
to work through that and to work on the emotional intimacy as well as the physical intimacy. Because like when we say vulnerability, that is the core of emotional intimacy, right? Is being vulnerable in the presence of your partner and being safe at the same time. I
Taking
think
measured
that's
risks.
taking those measured risks, exactly, and creating that safety for one another is at the core of that. And then to build that into the bedroom and in the sexual manner is just so, I mean, so therefore we go to the importance of therapy and clinical work in partnership and in coupleship when one has been in addiction.
Yeah. And I think about too some of the folks I've seen who are kind of dating in early sobriety and the importance of sort of getting support during that process, because boy,
Yes.
dating just period is difficult, right? Like it's just there's rejection, there's putting yourself out there, there's initiation, never mind like returning to the same partner. But when you're dating, right, it's just hard anyway. But adding in the piece of sobriety and having to reintroduce yourself, introduce your sobriety, all of that, right? Do you have thoughts
100%.
about that process?
Yes, and
Yuck.
it's so funny. It's so funny that you even mentioned that because my last couple client last night was in my office and I said, there really should be, after rehab, there should be like relationship college because they burst out laughing because they're recovering addicts, and they're in this like to where they're trying to reintegrate intimacy after being shut down for a long time. And yeah, I think it's just so important because, again, we do not necessarily have those relational skills on deck immediately into recovery. And so to gain that and to build that together is like
Well, and I think
everything.
to navigate, because especially in dating, I mean, it comes up anyway, but I think it's magnified for those folks that have had addiction issues, is the
Mhm.
stuff around self-worth. You mentioned that earlier, right? There's confidence issues that's going to come up in dating, self-worth, power, like, do I
Mhm.
deserve things? Like, all of that gets kind of churned up in that
Mm.
process.
Right. So convoluted. Yes.
Like, whose turn is it to call? Do I have to pay for everything? Like, all of that is
Right.
like up for debate. And it's
It is
it's
so hard.
tricky of like, how much of this work am I supposed to do? What do I deserve? All of those
Right.
questions get challenged.
Right. I know.
I want you to
You
like
know,
me.
right. I had one client tell me one time, she was like, how do I know how to ask for my needs to be met when I don't even know what my needs are? So it's so much of that self discovery too, like, what do I want? What do I need in a relationship? Who am I? And all
Mm-hmm.
of that self discovery before they can even start to verbalize their wants and needs in a relationship. So dating can be terrifying. And it can also, I enjoy though when people come into my office dating and recovery because it's the most practical practice
Mm-hmm.
that they can do. Is I say, look at dating as you're collecting data, period. You're collecting data about yourself and you're collecting data about the other person. And don't put so much love or we have to be together emphasis on it as like I'm just getting to know myself and to know them and to know us in partnership.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's just information gathering. Yeah.
It's just information gathering. Exactly.
Yeah. Because
Exactly.
it's a numbers game.
Right. And it's so important for people who are in recovery from substances though, because we don't like to wait on that. We don't
Mm-hmm.
like that waiting, the 3 to 6 months of getting to know someone and before you decide to take it further and whatnot. We don't like that. We want to know the answers right now.
Yeah.
We want what we want.
Well, and that's the reality of a longer term relationship, is the getting to know, right? That there has to be the small talk and then there goes into the deeper. And that's how you get to, there's tests that happen along the way into building a deeper relationship. And you can't rush that. It has to
Yeah.
organically unfold. And
Yes.
there has to be a certain amount of patience that addicts are typically not very good at. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Do you help your clients create a dating plan?
You know what? To be completely honest, no. And we talk about it. We talk about goals and we talk about their commitments to themselves, but an actual written down paper dating plan, no. Because for me as an addict, and this, I guess this is where that as an addict, it kind of helps with my clinical role as well. I know if I got anything in writing anywhere about what I was supposed to do, it kind of went out the window. I don't like being told what to do.
Really? You're like, if you give me a rule, I will break it. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's it's just typical for addicts, in recovery. Like, please don't give me a rule because I'm going to go the opposite way of the rules. So I don't, but I do talk. I do talk. We have lots and lots and lots of talk time around, what your values are now. What do you want to see for yourself in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship, and how are you going to get that? Because we don't necessarily get that from doing the same thing we've always done. It's not going to work like that. So we're going to have to do something different. So, but what I created in my book, it's in the last chapter of my book, I call it the compassionate structure plan. And it can either go in conjunction with the dating plan, but I use it as in like not in addition, I use it in lieu of a dating plan because I think it makes more sense for a person in recovery to go through and maybe check off, do some checklists, maybe write some affirmations after the date.
Mm-hmm.
to kind of help with their red flags, seeing any kind of red flags, seeing any kind of boundary violations, seeing any kind of patterns that they may be
Okay.
doing over again. You know what I mean? So it's kind
Some
of like a 10,
discernment. Yeah.
right, using some discernment, things like that. So it's kind of like a 10th step, so to speak, if you're in the 12-step programs. It's like a 10th step. You're looking at your inventory each night before you go to bed. So that's what I like more for the dating, as opposed to here is your dating plan and you need to follow it, and
Mm-hmm.
it
It's
just
helpful. It's more life skill building, right? It's like what's working, what's not. Let's course correct in real time. And I like that too for sex. It's like, let's not do a postmortem where we pull everything apart. I don't think
right.
that's so helpful, but I think trying to understand what felt good, what do you wish you had said, right? You're doing some rehearsal because people need language. They need to understand, what would you like to say? How might you introduce this preference in the
Mhm.
bedroom? How might you initiate what you want? As
Right.
needs arise that you can't verbalize, how might you introduce that in the future? Part of it is like, let's give you some language to do this in a way that feels organic for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if any of your listeners want to have access to that, they can absolutely email me and I will send them a free PDF copy
Oh,
of
great.
that. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll put that in the show notes too.
Okay, sure.
Great. That sounds good. So, what else do you have coming up? I mean, your book is just come out recently, so that's pretty exciting. You're going to probably be doing
Yep.
more around that.
Be doing more around my book for sure. More presenting on, like you saw, Jen, in May, more presenting around the addiction, substance use addiction in conjunction with the sex and love
Mm-hmm.
issues. So I'm going to be doing more presenting and just carrying on with my private practice. I do a workshop as well, a family of origin workshop, because I do believe that a lot of our relational patterns begin in our family of origin, begin with what we grew up watching, and begin with what our first relationships were like with our parents or our
Yep.
caregivers. Yeah,
That's where it all begins.
it's where it all begins.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much for having me.
So, if you want to reach Kim, you can find her at klcounseling.com, and I will put all this in the show notes. But thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, it's Dr. Jenn. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please leave us a review and leave a comment if something struck you. We'd love to get the feedback. It really helps the podcast. And if you want to reach me, go ahead and direct message me on Instagram, or you can reach me at jen@rivieratherapy.com. Thanks.